Hi everyone.
Welcome to Handpan live stream. I'm Jerry Walsh from Didge Project here in the mountains in upstate New York, and this is my buddy Mateo.
Hello everyone, it's Mateo from Didge Project. It's my buddy Jerry.
And yeah, we're going to be going over just some different handpan scales, mainly made by Aura. Before we get started on Aura handpan scales, though, I just wanted to talk about this guy here. This is my PanArt. This is one of the original handpan models made by the company that invented them. This is a second generation D minor Hijaz. And you know, it's funny talking about different handpans with people and this and that. A lot of people, they immediately think PanArt is like the best scale and the one that they must have, and they pay triple, sometimes quadruple the amount to get this instrument. I was fortunate enough because a friend of mine happened to have one, and she bought it from the makers in Switzerland originally, and she just offered it to me because she wasn't playing it anymore, and said, like, yeah, I would like to sell it and pass it your way. So I didn't have to pay, you know, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 for it. I paid whatever I paid for it. And you know, it's just as a comparison to hear the different sound in the instrument and with the Aura handpan, and like what the difference is in the resonance and the quality of the sound. The modern instruments these days have like really caught up to what the original instruments were. So just wanted to talk about that right off the bat, because that's kind of like something that a lot of people message me about. They say, oh, like, where can I get a PanArt handpan and this kind of thing. What we tell people in the handpan world is like, basically you get the PanArt handpan if like magic comes your way. But the reality is that many people have learned to replicate that magic in their own form and their own style. And there's just tons of really magical, beautiful instruments out these days. The instruments that we primarily sell at Didge Project are the RAV drums from Russia. And then the Aura handpans, which Mateo and I were playing in the beginning. The one that I was playing is the D minor Kurd. What were you playing? Are you playing mine?
No, I mean, yes, but the one I'm holding is F Low Pygmy by Aura.
Cool. And Aura is made by our buddy John, who is actually not too far away from where we're up here in upstate New York. He's in New Jersey. And really happy to represent his instruments. They're awesome and they just sound phenomenal. They're on par, like I said, with the PanArt ones that everyone seems to put on this pedestal. And then we also work with our friend Raphael from Tacta Handpans, and we don't have any Tactas with us at this moment, but they're also phenomenal instruments and they sound great as well. So I'm just going to play a little bit with just the PanArt on itself, so you can just kind of hear what the sound of it is like. And maybe I'll do some other kind of crazy sounds with it as well that I like to add in. For me, this is the first percussion instrument that I ever started to play. For like a lot of people that come to these, gravitate towards these instruments. And it opened up not just like percussion for me, but it also opened up like the voice and beatboxing. So I try to get as like multifaceted and dynamic with it as possible. And yeah, I'll just play it for a little bit and you can just hear what it sounds like, and then we'll just transition over to one of the Aura handpans so you can also hear what that sounds like. So this instrument, like I said, was one of the first percussive instruments I ever got, and it kind of like opened up my voice in a lot of ways and just got me into beatboxing as well as singing, just like kind of being as creative with things as I possibly could with it. And you know, like it has like a really beautiful resonance to it, but like we were saying, like the Aura handpans, they also have something super special to them, and it's kind of like they say comparing apples and oranges sort of situation where you really can't put one thing above another, a different pedestal. It's like each thing allows a different kind of aspect of creative expression to move through it. So yeah, do you want to jam in one of the Aura handpans on your own, and sure, then just as a comparison? Because Mateo has a really unique style as well. I've taken some percussion lessons with Mateo.
Right. So this is going to be Aura Handpan F Low Pygmy. I never had Aura hand. I mean, I never had original PanArt handpan. I think I came to this world much later, and I think what the handpans for me are about, and what is the great thing about handpans, it's something I could just call with one sentence. That's basically you cannot go wrong with handpans. So you cannot go wrong with a brand of the handpans, because as Jerry said, like they are just all different, but they are all great, and you cannot go wrong with the scale, and you can also not go wrong with the technique, and this is pretty awesome. I am coming from I mean, my background in drumming is just a drum kit, and then I started to play all kinds of other percussions. And if you are playing any kind of drum, or if you have any kind of musical background, or the rhythmic training, there's any kind of skills from djembe, from drum kit, from tabla, from frame drums, are very easily you can very easily translate it on this kind of drums. So this is great. And there's also there is no right or wrong here. There's just like, oh no, you should not hit like this, or you should not hit like this, or you should use this finger, or no, this. Like, no, this is the great thing is about it. It's the only thing you need to use is like your own, preferences, or your own ear and your own heart. When you choose a scale, because the people are sometimes asking me, like, I don't know which scale to choose, which scale is the best. There are no best scales. What you need to do, you have to just take this drum, this instrument, this magical thing on your lap, start hitting this, and just see how it makes you feel. Or maybe you prefer this. different vibe, huh? So each of them is telling their own stories. Just which story you prefer is totally up to you. And also the same with a technique. There's, you can hit here, you can hit here, you can hear with this finger, with this part, you can tap it, you can mute it, you can press and hit, and you can hear everywhere. And you will just get a different sound. So this is not, it's not that it is right or correct to hit here and here, and it's not right to hit here. No, you can hit in the middle of the plates. I do it all the time. Even you can take this drum like this and play here. So it's totally versatile, it's just there for you. You really don't need to be a master musician in order to start playing these instruments. It's great for meditation, it's great for concentration, it's great to play for people, it's great to play for yourself. You can just basically, after a hard day, just lock yourself in a quiet room and just play something very simple and meditate with the sound. It's very soothing. And you can play like literally 2-3 notes. And meditate. So you can basically enjoy it in all kinds of different ways.
Cool. So I just want to say hi to everyone. My name's AJ. I'm going to be here behind the scenes. I'm switching the cameras. I'm running the audio. And I'm going to be bringing your questions from the chat room into the whole webinar that we're doing. So, you probably won't see my face again, but you will hear my voice. I just want to let you guys know that I'm here. Say hello, and thank you all for joining us. First question that I want to share, and this is actually more for Matt Bazgier, because I know that we covered this in a previous video. The question is, what is the right way to strike the handpan?
Well, it really depends what kind of a sound you want to get, because you might want to get a very soft sound, and then like for example like this, you may get more slappier sound or different texture. So I just for the basic stroke, I put probably finger perpendicular to the surface of the drum, my middle finger, but it can be also pointing finger, and I just hit the drum. And you have to experiment with the sound. You have to just find the optimal place at the instrument to hit it. You just need to hear it. You can also hit it not like this, but slap it with your finger, just like this. It's sharper sound. You have more information from the surface of the drum, especially if you hit out of the the notes. So this is this technique versus this one. You might also use the knuckles. For example, I very often hit with the knuckle of my finger. You might want to even use them here, all the knuckles. And so you use the combination of very different strokes depending what kind of a sound do you want. Do you want more mellow, softer, or more dynamic, sharper sound? Cool.
So can you tell us which pan that is again and give us a little overview? We'll just talk about that scale a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a handpan by Aura, and the scale is F Low Pygmy. It sounds like this. So this is a root note, the so-called ding. What is really great about, most of the handpans and the RAV drums are designed a way that you can think about them graphically. For example, divide them on parts, like for example this part, upper part versus lower part, and then you have some kind of a dialogue here going on. And the lower part. Again. So this scale this is F scale. F Low Pygmy, that means that it's a F scale with flat 6, I believe. It's pretty neutral. I wouldn't say it's, there are some scales that are definitely, darker and minor. There are some scales that are definitely brighter in the major scale. I love a Pygmy scale because you can fit into a lot of musical context with that drum. So, and a lot of people actually are buying a Pygmy scale because they are pretty versatile. So yeah, you have this kind of a dialogue here between the lower parts and the upper part. And you can also look at the handpans like this. Or even like this. You can approach, RAV drum from so many different angles and directions, and just play it from here, divide it like this, use 2 voices, and just explore the instruments because it has so many stories to tell.
Great. Question for Jerry. Someone's asking, how do you use the RAV drum during meditation sessions? They're asking, they already have a handpan, but they don't really have any background in drumming.
That's probably the best thing you can have if you've never, if you want to use it for meditation sessions, is to not have any background in drumming, actually. The 3 of us, we have a teacher who's been doing meditation and yoga and all these kind of different practices with sound healing for over 45 years. And so we go into a lot of talks about how to use music, because the 3 of us are also part of a sound healing group called Dream Seed. And what we do is we basically set up sound healing ceremonies where we have an altar place, people come and they lay down, and we basically just go into sound for about 2 hours or so. We do this in Brooklyn. And our teacher is always saying, can you just get out of the musician mind? Can you get out of the performance mind? Can you get out of the linear, the rigid, and become flexible? Can you be responsive to the moment? Can you be tuned into the energy of the moment? And that's so much of what the teaching with sound really becomes. It becomes less about a performance, less about showing off, and a lot more about acupuncture. How can the sound be used to really push people into a deeper state of awareness, a deeper state of emotion? What I personally like to do is, with the RAV drum in particular, the RAV drum to me is I would say symbolizes water. It's just the most watery sound ever. You just strike it and it's just, everything's just flowing that kind of thing with it. So as the RAV drum to me symbolizes water, I like to think about using it in a way that invokes kind of that emotion of water, this sense of spaciousness, expansiveness, a place of emotions flowing, a place of kind of peace and tranquility. And, you know, depending on like what's happening in the space, whether you're playing for yourself or if you're playing for other people, like what are the emotions that are kind of occurring within you? And, you know, if you're in a place, if you're playing for yourself, where maybe like Mateo was saying you had a stressful or hard day of work, then at moments it's good to like, you know, bring the fire into the water so you can play quickly and fast with the instrument, you know. Get into it with a lot of like force, but then remembering that this is not a performance, it's a journey of consciousness, of awareness to bring us into a certain state of being. So it's really powerful to like bring that force, but then, you know, draw back on it and then come into a place of spaciousness. And what's really beautiful about the RAV drums in particular is that they have so much sustain and delay in the way that with the notes that are struck. Like you can hear just when you hit the bass note how long it goes for. Now it's done, almost, you know. So you can really use this instrument, the RAV drum in particular, to tap into that spaciousness. So every time you strike it, you can be really slow, deliberate, and like be as much a active creator as you are a listener in the process, because you don't need to be filling the space so much. There's a lot of the sound is so drawn out that it creates a lot of space that you can just really step into that. So, you know, like I said, you can bring like the fire, the force through the instrument. Like it has that capacity to be played rhythmically in that way, but then you can use it to be really spacious. And so a lot of what I've learned from working with my teacher and working with different, I don't know, I guess you could say elders in the world of sound healing is how, you know, just paying deep attention to like what is it that the space needs at this moment? What is it that's really gonna move the energy into like a higher place, into a more resonant place, into a more like emotionally connected place? What is it that really is gonna allow people to step into that place where things are flowing and being more connected? And the key thing that our teacher and virtually every teacher that I've ever studied says is following your intuition. So the intuition just comes from being in a deep state of listening, in a deep state of connectedness with what's happening emotionally. So really like just tuning into that inner voice and having a sense of like trust with that. And, you know, I feel like with these instruments in particular, like they were created not really as musical instruments, to my understanding. They were and they weren't. They were created like as sound sculptures. They were created as an artistic expression that could allow people to connect to themselves and to others in a way that maybe just wasn't, that door wasn't open for people originally. And like what Mateo was saying is that there's no right or wrong way to hit it. The idea is like that whatever you do, wherever you touch it, it's going to sound really good. And that's one of the things that I always love about sharing the instrument with people, especially people who are not musicians, is that they just come to it right away and like, oh wow, everything I do works. It's not like there's a learning curve like with a guitar where, you know, you'll spend months just trying to hold the thing correctly and then and it still sounds really whack. But what's nice about the handpan is like an infant can come up to it and touch it and immediately like a beautiful sound is coming through. And what's also special about it, to come back to the question about it being meditation, is that when you're using the instrument as a meditative tool, there's no need for it to be a performance. We're not trying to show off or like become like a cool musician or something like that. It's just like creating spaciousness. It's just creating a space for emotions to open up and for us to step into like more of a place of expansiveness and healing in that regard. And so it doesn't require a lot of musical talent. It just requires like that awareness to be approached to the instrument. And I wanted to share one last thing about the question. I was watching the documentary called The Buddha, which is very funny. It's on Netflix. And there was a scene where there was a forest monk, and he goes, "Oh, but if I go away and I practice I don't practice for a long time as a renunciate, and then I come back to the flute, I will have not learned anything." And the Buddha says something like, "Oh no, because you've been practicing and you're in that place of renunciation. When you come back to the flute, you'll be a master." And then they display this, and the guy who's concerned about his flute playing comes back after months of meditation, just creates this beautiful, magical sound. And to me, that's the whole teaching. It's like, what is the consciousness? What's the intention? What's the emotional awareness that you are bringing into the instrument, and then allowing it to speak through you, and creating that connection, and then the awareness of what's happening in the space. That's my answer to that question. How did that sound to you, Matteo?
Wow, that was deep, Jerry. I mean, I totally agree. And what is great, I think what Jerry said is not only about handpans and RAV drums. It's just about, sound healing and music in general. And I don't have anything to say except I fully agree.
Cool. That's why we work together.
So next question is mainly for Matteo, since he has a specialty in this field. What are the best microphones to record a handpan? And I know it's not an easy answer because there's a ton of microphones out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every question, what is the best microphone to record certain instrument, is tricky. Because the microphone is a little bit like an instrument itself. Each microphone has its own character. Each microphone emphasizes different bands of the frequency. So definitely you just need to use, again, your ear and just figure it out which microphone sounds the best. But this is for the situation if you have many microphones. Most of us doesn't have 20 different microphones in the studio, and we can go experiment the whole day. So I will basically say that I think the best way to approach it is you basically need 2 condenser microphones, any kind, condenser microphones, and you can experiment a lot with the positioning of the microphone. So this is, and I encourage you to do so, just place the microphone here. I mean, if you have 2, then great. If you have 1, you can also experiment to put it here, to put it here, to put it further, to put it closer. If you have 2 microphones, 2 condenser microphones, I guess the most common used one are the bullet microphones, the small one, and you place them over the handpan, probably not too close because the condensers are very sensitive. So you put them very, like around, few feet from the instrument itself, 2-3 feet at least. And then you want to experiment with the positioning. So place them higher, place them lower, place them like this, place them like this. There are many different, options. Also, you can, if you have a stand, you can definitely put a dynamic microphone inside this hole, and this is where you will get all the low sound, all the basses, all this kind of sound. You might miss it if you hear, the instrument itself, the whole. But if you put a microphone there, especially a dynamic mic, then you can add some more bass, some more richness into the mix. And there are so many different ways you can put the condenser microphones. You can put the most you can put them like this, as I said. Just for example, try for the microphones, the most important thing, I guess, is they are the same distance from the surface of the drum. So don't place them maybe like this, the one is here and the one is here. Try to place them probably the same distance from the drum, but a different a position and listen. Just put the headphones, put the microphone, play and listen. Change a position, play and listen. And you might want this kind of sound, you might want more close sound, you might want more open sound. But I would say that the best is just 2 condensers and 1 dynamic microphone here inside will allow you to get really full spectrum of sound. And it's so much fun to play, you know, with the condenser microphones, with the positioning. You might want, if you want to get a closer sound and more here, like the you know, the skin on the drum. Or, you know, if you play something very soft, you might want to put them a little bit closer. If you're playing something louder, you might put them a little bit further, but then you will get, you know, more room and ambience. So it really depends, but I would say the setup to start is 2 condensers and 1 dynamic microphone in the bottom. Thank you.
Can we just let's just maybe do a close-up on the mics that we're using and tell about the mics that you're using, because we at Didge Project actually own a pair of these Rode NT5 mics, and you also personally own a pair of these mics, and I don't know, they're pretty versatile mics. Maybe you can tell about what you use these mics for beyond just handpan, so that people can know, you know, this is something we're using. I think they're about $400 for a pair. Is that right?
Yes. So can you show it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a Rode NT5 microphone. This is small diaphragm condenser microphone. There are few kinds of microphones, but the most popular ones are a dynamic one and the condensers. These are the condenser microphones. That means that they are basically more sensitive. They are picking up much more details. And they comes in a pair, and there's a reason for that, why there is a pair of the condenser one, because with 2 condenser microphones, I mean, you have 2 microphones because from the same reason you have 2 ears. So basically 2 condenser microphones allows you to get a good stereo sound. You will get a notion of space. So whenever you put the 2 condenser microphones, then in the mix after you pan them. One microphone goes, you pan it totally to the right, and the other one to the left. And this is a little bit like, you know, like a 2 ears. And these are pretty, as AJ said, pretty versatile microphones. You can use them for handpans, you can use them for the guitar, you can use them as an overhead for the drum kit. Voice doesn't sound, I mean, this is not like a vocal mic, but if you record like a multiple voices or a choir, it works really great. My starting point is to put the 2 condenser microphones in the position that's called AB, and this is basically you place them like this, and the distance is the same as the distance one ear from another. This is a very good simulation of your ear. I mean, the way people hear, the human skull is designed and ear. So like you place them like the ear distance from each other, pointing the source of the sound, which is, you know, the handpan, and then you pan one to the right, the other one to the left. Yeah, NT5s are great, or any other pair condenser microphones.
Awesome. So I'm thinking let's do another demo of another scale, not one of the other new Aura scales, and then we'll we got a bunch more questions, so we'll get into it. So what else we got?
I'll play this one.
This is C sharp Sapphire.
This is C sharp Sapphire. This is one of my favorite scales ever. I met Raphael, who makes Tacta handpans, at Hangout Gathering 3-4 years ago, and I met him because I played this scale that he had crafted a Tacta on this version, and I was like, wow, this is the best scale I've played in a long time. This is awesome. And this is an Aura version of that. And AJ, this one is nitrided, yeah?
Yeah, this one is we special ordered this for a friend of ours.
This one is nitrided, while these other ones are raw steel that Aura has. That's why they're kind of blue tintish. This one's like all chrome kind of looking and everything. And yeah, the scale is just super beautiful. I just love this one. So.
And I think it'd be cool to hear the difference if we can actually hear a difference between Nitrided and the raw steel. But first, let's just hear this new one. Let's hear the new one, and then we'll do a comparison after.
Scale just makes me happy. It's a happy scale. Play it? You wanna play that one?
This is just a different scale.
Different scale, different material though. You can kind of just hear.
Can you actually pass me the one?
Which one is this? This is the D minor?
This,
Kurd?
Sorry, this is a Kurd.
Yeah.
D minor.
This one I was playing in the beginning.
This is a completely different vibe. The Kurd. I mean, all the Kurd scales they have this Middle Eastern vibe. I mean, I personally love it. It's not my favorite, but it's difficult to say actually which isn't my favorite. So, yeah, I mean, you can definitely hear there is a slight difference in the sound between this nitrate drum and.
What would you say the difference is?
Definitely this drum for me I am feeling more of a attack. I'm feeling more the contact of the skin and the metal, so more of those very high things, and this one I don't hear it so much, those high pitch sound. But I definitely hear more resonance and maybe a little bit more richness when it comes to internal harmony and the resonance inside the instrument.
It seems to have like more of a ping up kind of feel to me on this one. But at the same time, like when AJ and I first got all the pans and we opened them up, I was kind of like, this feels and looks a lot nicer to me. These are super beautiful. I mean, you don't need me to describe it. It's really obvious. But the feel of this one is super cool with the chrome kind of vibe on it and everything. At the same time, I feel that like the sound is not too different, but there is definitely something about picking this one up that has an edge to it that I like. But at the same time, I also love this scale a lot. So it's hard for me to differentiate. In transparency, I cannot honestly tell.
Let's go on to the next question, which is, so this guy's saying, I've spent only a few months with my handpan, have some experience with the djembe and guitar. How do I take my practice forward? Because I seem like I'm playing the same thing due to one scale.
Well, for me, I spent 2 years with the PanArt here, and I almost sold it because I was just like in the same exact situation where I was just getting nowhere, and my girlfriend had bought me a djembe, and I was kind of like, I was in the same position playing the djembe and playing the handpan and just feeling like I'm in the same thing. I would just do this every time. If I can remember it now, but something.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
We've been hearing a lot of this. Yeah, we used to.
But the key thing is 100% is just play with other people. Because you might even think that you get to a place where you actually establish a lot of like repertoire with your style and your playing, but then you sit down with somebody else and you're like, whoa, this person knows a lot more than me, and then suddenly you can just absorb what's happening. That's 100% what the transition is going to be for you, is just like finding other people to play with who are more established. And it doesn't always necessarily need to be more handpan players. Like what got me to the next level in the handpan was actually just playing the djembe and just getting like comfortable, just being like, just getting like a really strong like comfort in this kind of motion. Because before, when I first picked up the handpan, being my first percussion instrument, it was just playing it like a piano and just having kind of like an awkwardness to my motion because it didn't really feel like something I wasn't established in, as opposed to Mateo, who's a percussion player. So the key thing that I highly recommend is finding other people to play with. My girlfriend is a vocalist and guitar player, so I just started to learn like different djembe rhythms and applying it to the guitar song she was playing. So I would listen to the guitar, listen to the vocals being shared with the guitar, and then I would match that with the djembe. And what's nice is that I gather with a lot of people in like big circles to play music pretty frequently. And what's nice when that happens is that my drum at that point in time was quiet enough that I could make tons and tons of mistakes and no one would notice. And so then it kind of gave me like a space to just experiment with like what was going to happen. So I recommend like going to drum circles. That's a really simple thing to find out, and just spending time with people that are kind of already at a level that you would like to get to, and just ask questions. Like, that's one of the main things that opens doors. People, you know, as you just asked this question to us, I encourage you to ask questions to people, but do it in person, and just sit down and just drill people. And like, how did you figure that out? How did you figure this out? What are some basic exercises, fundamental exercises that I can learn to master that? And maybe you have some things to share about it too, because you are a percussion teacher and I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for this question because it is pretty essential. And I remember there was a very large discussion in the internet in, I don't know, a year from now, or some guy posted like a post that on a RAV drum thread on Facebook that basically, I mean, he is disappointed. I mean, he is a piano player, I guess. I mean, or he had some kind of a musical training, and he basically wrote that he is disappointed about the possibilities of the drum. I mean, and this is really important. Yes, this instrument has that amount of notes. You have two hands, and this is the bottom line when it comes to you know, melodic possibilities. You cannot play anything or everything, you know, on this drum. That's true. But as Jerry said, like the way to go deeper is to study more the percussion and the drumming and the rhythms. This is how you go actually really deeper, and this direction of diving into playing is infinite. And look, I mean, I will just play you something and I will use two notes. This drum has 8 of it. I will just use 2. For example, just start from something super simple, right? Oh, you just have to choose 2. Okay, these 2 notes, right? So like this was just a sample of like the range of expression. So this is a direction to go into. Like the amount of notes doesn't really matter. You can just do so much with 2 notes or 1 note or 3 notes. So, and that's why this question is important, because this is a question about a direction of progress in this instrument, and the direction is like not into like the multiplicity of, you know, the notes. The direction is go basically inside, and also like, you know, you can explore everything what Jerry said about the meditative aspect of this instrument and the playing for other people. Like you don't really need much. I mean, there's so much you can do with this instrument, and musically, rhythmically. You can basically play all kinds of rhythms. Apply African. If you play djembe, you can apply African patterns to this drum. It's going to sound great. it's going to sound like completely different than djembe. You can apply all the samba, Brazilian patterns, the bossa nova. You can just Middle Eastern frame drums if you have this a technique, just Indian tabla. I mean, it's going to work awesome, And I very often I play a drum and bass. The direction is definitely, I think, to go inside yourself and to go to practice with other people. This opening completely different new field of exploration, and practice your rhythmic skills. And if you decide to buy 2 of these drums, then all these possibilities Jerry mentioned and I basically multiply by 2. So with the 2 of these, basically lifetime is not enough, to explore.
Yeah, and also just getting really creative. For instance, as I was doing in the very beginning, I was like, I'll add beatboxing, I'll add throat singing, I'll add normal singing, rapping, just getting really creative with whatever kind of expression. Play the Didge and the handpan at the same time, play the cas and the handpan. These are all things that came to me as I had just one scale, and I was like, okay, what is as creative as I possibly can be with it. There was one point where I was like, oh, I'm gonna beatbox into the Didge because it's into the into the handpan, because it's a big resonating chamber, and I was like, just ways to get creative and not be limiting yourself to oh, there's only one thing to do here and it's linear and it has to be done the way that everyone else has done it before. Just what's something I can do that's totally different, that just opens my mind to the possibility of oh, this can be done in a totally different way.
Nice. So one of the questions that someone's asking is there a specific rhythm you recommend for people who are starting out? Maybe each one of you could just give a quick demo of one rhythm that you started with that really helped you take your playing to the next level.
Let me explore and think about it for a second. Just doing this. Just getting a sense of what the scale feels like. Because I think what Matteo was trying to communicate in the demo he just gave of the 2 notes is how something so simple can be expressed in so many different ways that that actually there's quite more to it than people will initially judge. So for instance, using dynamics, right? You can be with the level of volume with the notes. So what's amazing about the instrument is that it's not just a percussion instrument. So it's not just but there's the use of harmony, right? There's the use of there's melody involved with the notes. So just being able to incorporate things like dynamics, the degree of how loud something is, and just the use of the notes and the emotion that the notes convey. And then also the speed at what you're playing. There's so many different factors that you can mix and match into that the rhythm can open up. So just going back, really quiet. Explore what you can do in the most simple fundamental thing and really build out from that. I think that when I first started playing, I was getting caught up in trying to learn many different complicated rhythms and just kind of trying jump ahead to many things. That's a tendency I think that everyone has as a musician pretty much, is they want to just kind of be at like the end game right away. So just starting with the most simple thing, and then and approach it from a place to like investigation, like what is the most interesting way that I can make this very simple thing. So just doing like just that simple, just getting the hands to move like that. And then like, you know, there's more complicated things you can do from here, but before I like maybe encourage you to go beyond the simple, maybe let you figure out for yourself, and maybe you want to talk about some more simple things that people can do to start, or if you think there's something more complicated, I don't know.
Sure. I mean, it depends how beginner you are, basically. I think that from the very, very beginning, the best is just what Jerry said, just explore the instrument, you know, just explore the scale. Then like 2 hands across. How does it sound? Then definitely get into some kind of right left rhythm as Jerry showed. So I would start from, if you're like on the very beginning, I would just start left, right on the middle note. And you might want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You may want to count loud. You might want to count in your head. But like get some kind of time measure, 4 or 8. And once you get into counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, start hitting on 1. Start hitting different notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So on. If you're a little bit further, you might want to start playing rhythms in 3. So you do the same thing, but you count to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then as you feel more and more comfortable, you can start to speed it up. Explore the scale freely. That's, I guess, good for the beginning.
Mateo does percussion lessons, and I highly recommend taking a percussion lesson with Mateo if you want to get more into it. It helped me out tremendously. So, just to...
He also does handpan lessons on Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp, Zoom, you name it. All right, let's do a demo of that last raw steel, the G Oxalis, which is actually one of my favorite scales because it's so bright and major sounding. So this is a G major scale.
Cool. I'm gonna demo this scale and then sing a African song that goes with it that I like a lot. love this scale.
I love the song.
I think that the part of the translation of that song is that there is a, I could be messing it up, but there's a bird chirping or singing in the middle of the night, and I don't know why, and it makes me happy, something like that. So that song with this scale, there's something about it because both the song is very uplifting, it's very happy, it's very just celebratory of life. That's very much how the scale feels to me when I play it, the emotion it brings forward. I think AJ was going to talk a little bit about maybe at some point the difference with the major and the minor scales, but you know, with the major scales, they just tend to have this like bright and uplifting happiness, kind of emotionally like sunshine energy, while the minor scales are more kind of like mysterious, dark, haunting, more deep meditative. They're not like in a negative way, but they're just more like they bring you into that like deeper place, more of like a place of like contemplation and mystery and that kind of thing, while the major scales are more just like, just be happy, okay, yeah. They're both really beautiful. Yeah, so this is the G Oxalis, and it is very wonderful to play.
So I want to see if you can pass that one over to Mateo and have him do a little bit of playing on it too. And while you're doing that, I will just give a little info about the scale. It's all the notes are in the G major scale. So it's G, B, I'm just looking at the screen right now. G, B, C, D, E, G, B, D, C, D. So it's really like the major scale without the 7. So it's it's almost like pentatonic, but you have the 4 in there, which is a C. So you have a lot of possibilities. You know, a lot of people are asking all the time, like, what do those numbers mean, the scale tones? Like here it's 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5. So those numbers are relative to the major scale. So in G major, you have the first tone, the third tone, fourth tone, fifth tone, sixth tone, etc. You know, a lot of times in those scale tones, you'll see like flat 3, flat 6, sharp 4, and those are like, you know, variations from the major scale. So for example, a G minor scale would be the same scale except B flats instead of B naturals. So wherever you see a B there, it would be B flat. For example, the G minor pentatonic RAV drum that Jerry has most of these same notes. It's just B flat instead of B natural. So anyways, let's hear what Mateo is going to do on the pan. That was awesome.
Thank you. Very beautiful uplifting scale indeed.
All right, so we are going to have a few more questions. We got a couple quick questions. I think camera 1 went out, so let's just zoom out on camera 2 for now. Quick questions. All right, here's one. It is, how much do the pans weigh? Well, that's not a very difficult question.
7,000 pounds? I don't know. Probably 8 pounds? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think they're like, it depends on the maker, but anywhere from like 8 to 13 pounds could be somewhere in that range.
Do stuff like that.
Yeah, somewhere close to between 8 and 10 maybe.
They're very travel friendly. I put mine in the overhead compartment of the airplane and I stuff it full of clothing. My friend Daniel Waples, who's a well-known handpan player, was one time doing a handpan show and he was playing it and it sounded like he was like really confused and was in front of like a couple hundred people, and then he took it out and he realized he had a pair of pants inside of it. So they're lightweight, but you can pack them up with stuff, put it in your backpack and travel with it.
All right,
And they comes like with hard cases, right? So they are, I mean, because those are sensitive instruments,
Yeah.
fragile, and but the great thing is that they comes with all those great hard cases that you can see in the back, which protects them really well and makes them very easy to carry.
And I'm really glad that I bought one myself, because before I had one, I got out of a cab in New York City and the taxi driver opened the door and it fell and I had a not good hard case, and fortunately it was on the back side of the PanArt, not the front, but that could have been bad, but it's okay now. It just looks it's just cosmetic, so hard cases are recommended, which we sell with the instruments. So.
All right, next question. What would be the best way to buy a really great but very cheap handpan?
These are really great, like 100% excellent, as I played it next to the PanArt, which goes, I mean, even with the dent, you could probably sell this for an exorbitant amount of money. But like, we sell these for $1,750. I mean, anything cheaper than that is probably going to be a piece of junk, probably. Or you're going to have a hard time finding something around that price that is quality, just like decent. But these are like phenomenal. Like when we got them, I was, because I played John's Aura handpans before and they're amazing. But I've only played the ones that he had nitrided, or were more in like the $2,500, $3,000 range. I hadn't played the cheaper ones. And then when I wasn't sure of the quality, but then when we got them, I was like blown away by how good they were. So the only other way that I can think of off the top of my head is by trading with someone. That's a good way to do it. If you know someone that has one that wants to get rid of it, and you have something that they would like otherwise, you can trade. That's a good way. It just requires knowing the community and knowing people. So
Yeah.
Not to mention RAV drums, which are like half the price of handpans.
Mm-hmm.
RAV drums sell in our store, like a lot, because people, I think, want that lower price point, and you get such an amazing sound. I mean, maybe just play a RAV drum so people know what we're talking about, but
Yeah.
You're getting almost on par quality of instrument with for about half the price. They start at $795.
Yeah, I mean, this is my RAV drum. It's a G Minor Pentatonic, and I have the PanArt and the RAV. These are the two instruments that I personally own. Mine is kind of rusted up because I traveled with it a lot, but the new ones, they have like a special coating on it that doesn't allow for that to happen. I bought this when they first started selling them, and to me, the RAV drum is not a lesser instrument. It's just a different instrument, just like a guitar and a triangle. Like, they just make different sounds. They look similar, but the sound of this is different, and I'll put this down for a little while, then pick it back up and just be like, whoa, this is like the most special instrument I've played in a really long time. So it's an epic instrument, and like AJ was saying, it's $1,000 cheaper than these already very not expensive handpans from Aura. So everyone I know has one of these things, loves them. And I know people that like them more than the handpan. So they just express different emotions, and they're actually easier to play than the handpans, just because of the nature of the way that tongues are cut. So yeah, RAV drums, they're awesome.
Next question. Do you measure the frequency in your sound healing sessions? Is there a healing frequency you aim for?
I measure the healing frequency by the smiles that come out of the sound healing session. No, I personally don't do that. You know, the way that I have been studying sound healing is more, I would say, like in the traditional cultures where it's not so much something done with as much technology, I guess you could say. It's more like rooted in like ancient practices. One thing that came to me as I read this question was I was at a talk by the best handpan makers like of the world at Hangout in 2016, like all the makers, there's like 20 of them. And someone asked the question like, oh, like what's the difference between, you know, 432 and 440? And I can't remember the guy who said it. But anyways, the handpan maker said that. He's like, to everyone, has anyone here had a transcendental experience listening to music in 440? And of course, everyone, raises their hand because virtually all music is in 440. He's like, okay, so to me, it doesn't matter if it's in 432 or 440. You know, I don't think that's necessarily, I don't know if that's what you were asking or not, but that's something that came to me when you asked that question. And for me, like the sound healing session is something that I do based off of like how it's affecting the heart of the people that come. That's my unit of measurement for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. At least we are from, you know, the setup that when it comes to sound healing, once you get to, you know, the sound healing world, I mean, your intention is probably the crucial thing. Your frequency is, you know, you have to just make sure that your frequency, you vibrate high, and because this is what you're going to transmit through the instruments, you know. And I know Carlos Santana said, like, you know, that the sound is in fingers. And so we don't measure the frequency. We don't get into numbers so much. Although I have background as a sound engineer, and I love to look at the frequency graphs and all kind of, you know, spectrum graphs. But what I discovered in my journey, being in a scientific world of sound and sound healing setup, definitely the frequency, what you transmit into the field, is probably more important than just certain frequency. And you know, we in Dream Seat, as Jerry said, we have sometimes 30 instruments. There's like 5-6 people there, each one of us have 5-6 instruments, so there's like 30 instruments there, and sometimes, you know, we play all of them, I mean, not in the same time, but there are like 5 people playing different instruments in the same time. So there's all kinds of frequencies. They're all just blended. You use handpans, guitars, voices, you know. So we don't aim for certain frequency. Like, I don't know, I see those videos in YouTube, 516 hertz to open your heart chakra. I mean, let's be honest, you know, this frequency itself will not open your heart chakra. It takes much more than that.
All right, we got another question, another buying question. Are there any do's and don'ts when shopping for a handpan, especially when shopping online, not in person? I think this is a great question because I always tell people, you know, it's very hard to shop for an instrument online, even though we are an online vendor of instruments. So how do you navigate buying online? You know, and there's so many options out there, and there's so many good things and so many maybe not so good things that you might wind up with.
Do's and don'ts. You know, if you can talk to someone who works there, especially with like the world of handpans, like, you know, ask them what their honest opinion is about that instrument. When people write me, I mean, I try to be as honest as I can with everything in life, but I mean, like when people write me asking questions about like this scale or that scale, because I think all the scales are beautiful in their own way, but there's some that just don't resonate with me. And then I try to share with people why that is. So a good thing to do is kind of like ask people who are selling the instruments, like, what is it that speaks to you in the instrument and why does it speak to you? Like, for me, I like the minor scales because I prefer like the kind of like the darker, more like mysterious kind of sound and vibe. That speaks to me more as a musician. Like the first instrument I ever started playing was the didgeridoo. I like to throat sing. It's like at the more like the undercurrent and like, you know, bass music kind of sound and stuff like that. So definitely like speak to the people who run the shop and see if they know the instruments. Because I know with handpans, there's a lot of like scam type situations where people sell them who don't know anything about the instruments, and they sell you basically a grill head that's been beaten with a hammer. So, do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, just as Jerry said, if you don't have opportunity to try them, then just, you know, that's why there are a lot of comparison in the internet where you can listen to different scales and then exactly use your intuition, which one sounds good for you, which one makes you feel better. And then I would say just ask the vendor, can you try it and return it? Maybe that's an option. Just, you know, so you can just, but I think, just the listening in the internet is the easiest option. That's why we also, you know, do all those videos at the Didge project when we just present them. This is how it sounds. So you can basically hear it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How do you protect or take care of a metal instrument like handpans? How do you prevent against rust? How do you clean it, etc.?
If you're in any kind of humid environment, keeping oil on it. The oil that's most popular with handpan players is called frog lube. It's actually used for weapons, but it's great for handpans. You just basically take a little bit of it, you rub it on the handpan, you let it sit out in the sun for about 15 minutes, and then you just kind of wipe off the remaining residue. That's like the most high-tech kind of thing you can do. I've had moments where I've been traveling in other countries and places where I don't have access to that, and I'm just kind of a weird place, but there's a kitchen nearby or a restaurant. I'll go get some olive oil or coconut oil just from whoever is making food, and just take a dab of that and rub it on. Just keeps the moisture from accumulating, and if there is any moisture, or if there is any moisture or rust that's accumulated, it can help rub it off. And getting a not a like steel wool, but getting like a relatively gritty kind of sponge, like those green sponges, maybe you know what I'm talking about, that's a little rough, that can help get rid of any rust that accumulates. And keeping it just enclosed. If you're in a humid environment, even having the case open a little bit will mess it up. These hard cases behind me, the hard case technology is the one right there. I'm looking at myself on the screen, so it's backwards, that one. Those are excellent for protecting against humidity. I've had the handpan out in the rain the whole night, obviously under a canopy, and opened it up in the morning, and it's been totally good, no issue. So having a good case and also applying the olive oil if you don't have frog lube is great.
Cool. So there's a picture of the cases that we sell, the EvaTech cases. All right, so that is most of the questions. Someone's asking about stainless. Unfortunately, we don't have a stainless pan here. It's a demo, so can't really get too much into that. Another question that maybe you can touch on really quickly: how hard can you hit a handpan without making it out of tune?
Well, I think Jerry succeeded in getting his handpan out of tune, so maybe he can share. I mean, you can basically hit it hard, but like not too hard. If you will constantly beat, the hell out of your pan, it will go out of tune. After sometimes it's not a kick drum. Mm-hmm. It's not, of course, it's not a violin also, and the drum needs to be hit, but you have to just use your sensitivity. There is this, when you play drums, you basically can feel when are you hitting too hard, and because there is this, you hit harder, and you get more and more response, more feedback, and there is this moment when you hit too hard, and you're not getting more feedback. In the case of in terms of loudness, you are getting, the sound is getting cranky and weird and distorted, and then you know that you basically are hitting your drum too hard. It will not have, nothing wrong would happen if you hit it, too hard here and there, but if you are going to be constantly banging this drum too hard, It will go out of tune, yeah.
Yeah, what just that kind of just share one like technique that you can do, because it depends. Like for instance, with the tonal field where the notes are, you don't need to hit it very hard, and like you can hit it hard. You can, it's fine. But just to share one thing you can do that you can punch the instrument. It's totally fine to do that if you hit it on the shoulders in between the notes. And I love to do this because it adds like a. I hit it very hard. But I would never do that to the tonal field because that would damage it. So it depends. The question you're asking depends where you hit it. You also kind of have like a snap, so it's like a. So, you know, the slap is like the snare right on the side there, in between the notes. And then, so hit gently on the tonal fields. You do not need to hit it hard to get a good sound. It's recommended not to, but you can, on the shoulders, you can come down on it. And I've never observed any issue with my notes. Same thing with the slap, so.
So I think the only pan we haven't heard yet is the RAV D major. So do one of you want to do a quick demo of that? And then I think we're going to close it up if there's no more questions.
You go first.
I think that instead of having you play that one, maybe you should play your G minor pentatonic.
Yeah.
Even though you might have played it earlier,
That's cool.
I think like you're very, Jerry, this is like one of his main instruments. This is his personal drum, so I'd love to hear him play that. Nice. One last question. Well, do you want to share anything about that scale in particular, since you're so comfortable with that one?
What I would say that I just like about the scale is I feel like I am in a like East Asian Zen garden. That's how I feel when I play it. But it's just very beautiful to me. It just makes me feel like I'm in a far off land somewhere, and it has a lot of different emotion that can be expressed through it. So G minor pentatonic is the first scale I ever played with the RAV drum, and remains to be my favorite one for sure.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. So another question is, do you ever play with mallets? And I just slipped some mallets over to Mateo so he can give a brief demo. My main thing with mallets is that you just don't want to play too hard, because they're like a much stronger attack. Even if they're very soft mallets, they tend to make the note a lot louder.
Yeah. So, wait. I'll move. It's okay. You can just get the same.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, of course you can play mallets, especially if you've been studying the drums and you have like the techniques with the drumstick. Exactly. I don't know if I would even play with mallets on a handpan, because as AJ said, it's difficult. It's easy to just to hurt it, but definitely on a handpan. And I'm playing super soft now.
Awesome. So just want to thank you guys so much. If there's any closing words you have for people, any words of encouragement, we're just going to, give you each the floor one more time, and then we'll say goodbye.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes, especially with these instruments. There's something super magical about them. One of the most amazing things you could ever do is take a handpan and go to a public place and play it in front of people, regardless of where you're at, and just watch like what happens. Like watch how you affect the whole environment. It's truly amazing. People will come up to you, ask you all kinds of questions, give you money, even if what you're doing is totally mediocre. I've been there, believe me. And it's just like an amazing thing just to realize, like, the key that this instrument holds to opening up, like, healing power for people, creative expression for people, a place of like meditation and contemplation. It's just an amazing instrument, and so really happy to share it. And that's why we do these videos and this kind of thing, is just to share something that's touched our lives and bring it out to the rest of the world. So hope you guys enjoyed and got something out of tuning in, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for basically, being interested in this, because I think it's great. And I can only share, my starting point was with this instrument was just for my personal, exploration. And as Jerry said, there's no right or wrong. And before I started to play for anyone else, I started to play for myself a lot, and just see where these instruments will take you, because like you apply some rhythmic patterns on these instruments, and they create a melody because they are designed that way. And I apply the same patterns of notes on different instruments, and it will give me different melody, different atmosphere, different energy. It makes me feel it in a different way. So they are very unique, and they have definitely soul and personality, each one of them. And thank you for choosing them. And just I think everyone who is like really got the hunch, you have a great journey ahead of you, and if you will get involved in one of these, and as we said in this thread about technical stuff, it's just you cannot, you can go really deep and explore it. And I heard so many people like telling them that this instrument helps them so much. Personally, I like people with PTSD who bought the RAV drums and handpans, and they basically just say that they just sit and play just for 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day, and it helps them so much. So there's a definitely huge healing potential, meditative potential. This instrument is a tool of a personal growth. It's awesome. So yeah, thank you.
All
right, guys. Thank you all so much. Thank you all at home for tuning in. It was really great. First Handpan live stream, and we will do it again.
Handpan.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Peace.